Run away.
Well, good morning. Hi, this is Lynn Mish, and I'm here. I'm back after a hiatus for a while, and I'm here to record Wellness Wednesday. And I have the delight of having with me Miss Jess Ardeal, and she's been my um, partner in crime now for many years, I think, and we've done a lot of projects together and had a great deal of fun in all of this process. And so we wanted to do a dual interview today on, I think, health and wellness and the important aspect of really defining how to really figure out yourself as far as we all have kind of individualized plans of care. So I'm going to introduce Miss Jess and have her say good morning, and we'll launch into this adventure, I think, which is going to be a lot of fun. So, Miss Jess, how are you this morning? And welcome.
Hi, Lynn. Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for doing this. What you bring out is really important with that integrative piece. And I think that's where we're all looking to move toward in this new generation of health consciousness and the future of healthcare that is now. And so in my experience working with both people and pets, everyone has a unique point of view and perspective. And one of the best things that we can do is honor that and acknowledge that individual point of view and experience. And part of that is individualizing our healthcare. So how do we do that? And there's a couple different ways, but really it comes down to knowing as much about your own body mind as possible, in my opinion. And part of that is really first and foremost getting to know your organs and systems and naming them, knowing them by name in the same way that you would have a successful work production in knowing each employee, what they do, what their role is, engaging them in that so they know how important they are. In that same way, we can engage our body consciousness and really co-create that health and reality that's optimal for us. And it's going to be different for everyone too, right? Everyone has a different definition of health and wellness, and that's going to be unique and individual to you. So yes, all about individualizing our healthcare and really starting to work one-on-one with that important piece. Sometimes that goes unsaid. So
I love the application that you just used because I love and we've got some backdrop as far as you talking about pets. I have a cockatiel that's about 19 years old, and he's chirping in this morning, and my golden retriever Sonny is joining us as well. He's sitting at my side, so he's listening very intently. So you're going to hear a lot of chirps and probably back noises and those kinds of things as we launch into this talk this morning. But I really like the application of knowing your organs like you would know your employees, because that's exactly what's happening in your body. I think it's really interesting because we never really look at our bodies that way. We just take it for granted that we walk around in these amazing machines. And I don't even know if we really recognize that we're walking around in these amazing machines, but we walk around in this amazing gift that we've been given, and it has all of these moving parts and all of these moving parts that are constantly on, and they're working in harmony together, hopefully. And I think oftentimes what happens is that we don't really recognize until something goes awry with one of those employees in our bodies. It's just like somebody in the workplace that all of a sudden isn't fitting in as well as they did before. And there's an underlying circumstance as to why. What's changed, what's altered in that system. Why did that employee, why are they out of sorts? Well, that is a lot like what's happening in the body. So I think when the body starts to let us know by giving us different signals, we don't often understand what those signals mean. And so they can come from a variety of different reasons. And I think that's why it's really important to connect to the body, to start to understand intimately, because all of the different parts of the body work together in harmony. And I don't know if we really truly understand those concepts or that principle, that it's an integrated whole. And oftentimes in medicine, because I have a very distinct medical background as well as a very distinct integrative background. And I think, and I have the pleasure of being a nurse. And so the intriguing thing about being a nurse is we look at the body from a very different perspective in our educational process. And as a nurse, we look at the body from the perspective of mind, body, spirit. And so there's different domains in the human experience that we address in nursing. And I always loved one of the nursing theorists that we looked at, and that was Martha Rogers, and she talked about energy. And so she was really one of the first theorists, I think, in nursing that aligned with the fact that we're energetic beings and that it's really important to have that body in harmony working together to provide the best energy that we can to fuel ourselves forward to live our lives well. So there's a whole process in that that's really important. And the foundation of that is what? Do you think? I know you're going to share with me, so I'm going to share that with you. I'm going to ask you that question. What's the founding principles of having a healthy body?
Well, you know, what it leads me to think of, Lynn, is that energy piece, and that gives us the fuel. It brings me to the blood that's circulating. And this isn't to answer your question, but where it got me going and jazzed up to think about is how the blood is communicating all of that data to our organs and systems and that vital foundation. So our body does two things all day, every day, on top of a billion other things. It's absorbing nutrients and it's eliminating toxins. And so that piece there of knowing your blood type, and there can be a lot of controversy around that too. Does it matter? Does it not matter? The Eat Right for Your Blood Type books and things of that nature go into that in more depth. But I think, why not know your own blood type? Why not at least have that piece to individualize it for yourself as well too, and really start to connect with how your blood is communicating not only physical data but the emotional imprint as well. As we've both had the privilege to work with Jeffrey Arnson and have that nutritional microscopy and seeing that live blood on the screen. It's a wonderful experience, and I would suggest everybody give themselves the opportunity to try that, to connect and have that visual of the impact that is within us, of all of the experiences and the accumulation of that throughout our life. So our body is always recording this data, and how do we tap into that and access that individually is what I think we need to explore more.
Well, and I think the other piece that you bring forward that's really important is when we use the Western model, and let's go into the Western model, because a lot of us, most of us probably that are going to be engaging in this to begin with, because we're beginners, and I'm going to get I got my windows open this morning because it's a lovely cool morning, so I'm getting all the backdrop from the streets and things. But anyway, so we're going to have a little bit of sound noise that comes in, some little sound pollution, but that's okay. But the other piece I think that's really important is that in the Western model, when we really look and understand what's happening with our blood work, I always help people, because when you go to the doctor's office, we know one of the very first things that they do is they're going to do some blood work, right? And the basics in that blood work, and they do a complete metabolic panel, and they do a complete blood count. And from just those two panels alone, you can see how your blood is functioning. It gives us, from a Western perspective, a lot of information. And a lot of times I'll sit down with patients and really go through all of those different values, because they tell us a lot about what the body is doing at that moment in time. And so it gives us valuable information, and then you can go even deeper. It's like when you look at your complete blood count and you start to look at, they call it a mean corpuscular volume, which is your MCV value. You can look at that and you can tell from that value alone the different kinds of anemias that may occur if they're there. You can tell if you're vitamin B deficient, you can tell if you're iron deficient, those kinds of things. And then you can start to look a little bit further to figure out what your body needs. I think the important thing is, when you start to look at these values, is to understand that what drives all of it is nutrition. And so to have really healthy cells, you've got to have really healthy content going into your body. And I love the example of the coming in and analyzing how sound your body is nutritionally and how the blood really tells us that. And it also goes through a whole detox period. That's the whole process of absorbing the nutrients, utilizing the nutrients. I know Sunday Mintz, who is a nutritionist and a pharmacist, always talks about the Krebs cycle and how important that is. And that cycle is about vitamin C regulation and methylation and oxygen uptake and all those kinds of things that really help to support the pH balance in the body and to determine alkalinity versus acidity and those kinds of things. But let's go back for a second to the complete metabolic panel, because when we're looking at that from a Western modality of treatment, because that's a really basic step, that, and then we'll look at cholesterol and those kinds of things. But when we look at that, we're looking at a window of all of your organs, which is kind of interesting. So you'll look at your organs, and so it tells you, like a BUN creatinine looks at your kidney function. You're going to look at sodium and potassium, because that's your major electrolytes. And what does that mean? What do all of these values mean when you're looking at them? Where they're the engines that drive your system. And so when you look at that from that perspective, and when I do a lot of teaching around these values, what happens is you want to look at, especially like sodium and potassium, it's like salt, right? Potassium comes from your fruits and veggies. But what it is I always tell patients, you're mechanical, electrical, and chemical. So you always have to have these different components so that your body can do the work that it needs to do. So sodium, potassium, essentially what it does, it creates electricity. And so when you think about the body as an energetic force, because that's what we are, we're going to start to move because we have those electrical currents. They call it ATP. It drives that force. And you're going to have that energy, that electricity that's going to move your muscles, right? And so there's all different kinds of things. There's calcium, magnesium. I always say there's dancing partners in all of this, because they kind of regulate and uptake and do different aspects of things with the relationship with each other. It's like I always say, calcium, we don't make minerals in the body, right? We don't. So we have to take them in through our food sources or supplements. And so it's really interesting because calcium, if you think about it, calcium causes contractility. So if your muscle moves and contracts, right, it's got to relax. So its dancing partner is magnesium. So a lot of times when we look at, I was a cardiac nurse for a very long time. And so I really started to understand the intricacies of that aspect of how the body functions and how the body moves, because if that heart wasn't beating for us, every second of every hour of every minute, or every minute of every hour of every day, we wouldn't be alive, right? So it's all those really synchronized, sophisticated, silent methods of how things are moving together, because everything has to move in sync. So the heart has to beat, so it has to open and close. So there's a very sophisticated system of chemicals and reactions that occurs that stimulates that muscle so that it can beat. Anyway, go ahead.
And all of those vitamins, minerals, and amino acids are the reason that we eat food, right? And it needs to be broken down into those structures. So if anyone's interested in a list of the vitamin, mineral, and amino acid list, we have a compilation. You can email me at jessicaardeal.com and I'll send you that attachment there. What I really love to bring attention to, Lynn, is the interviews that you did for Creating Infinite Health. It was such a wealth of knowledge and going more into depth in all of that with various doctors and practitioners and wellness providers like yourself, and to always be an advocate and a voice for those of us that don't have the background and experience to navigate both worlds and integrate it. I'm wondering, if I turn the mic to you, what is the number one thing you would tell people to pay attention to when starting to integrate both models?
I think that it's important to recognize that your health, as the old adage goes, without your health, you have nothing. And I think that it's really important to think about. I worked with breast cancer patients. I had the privilege and honor of working with breast cancer patients for almost 6 years. I've had the privilege of working with literally thousands of patients throughout my professional career. And, so you get glimpses and snapshots of people along the way. And I think the important piece is really gaining an understanding of where are you in the foundation of your own being. It's really, I think it wasn't until I had my own health crisis back in 2006, where I was diagnosed with breast cancer, that I really started to, and I always thought I was doing everything right. I was healthy, ate well, did these different things, but I really didn't, I don't think, truly connect to my body. And so I think that's the piece that we oftentimes, we don't make that connection to our body again until something goes wrong. And I think the piece is to recognize and be aware of the intricacies. So the first step, I think what I share with patients is that it's a good idea, because I think it's understanding and sometimes to pull the integrative piece together, the Western model and all these different components, it takes a step at a time. So probably the very first piece is to have some blood work done, and then you can go from there. You get a platform of really a foundation of where you are. And I can certainly do those consultations for people. I can really get blood work done at a reduced rate now. I'll be launching my website in the very near future. And so there is a way, and then we can do consultations based on that. And then it can step into, I think, as you and I both know, different aspects of, can we add healthy nutrition on board? We can do nutritional consults at that level, do all different kinds of, I think it's really building a partnership. Me as a practitioner, you as a practitioner, I think what happens when you work with people is you build a relationship and you educate at a level that they are accepting and aware. Because you can't give something to someone. It's like the old adage again, of leading a horse to water and you can't make them drink, right? So you can't bring patients forward or people forward until they're ready to embark on a journey with their own body. And so what this is about, I think what you and I are developing and doing, and that was like creating Infinite Health and all the different, you were the one that really led me into building a summit, right? Because it was really a fascinating experience, but it came from you having your own summits before I had mine. And I think what it is it's really helping others as you try to educate, and people are only going to process so much information. You can't overload a system. It's kind of like overloading the circuitry, right? Because you're going to blow a fuse. So you don't want to blow the fuse. You want to do it a little bit at a time. And there's so much information out there in the world today. There's so much information on the web, and you can get into all different sources and all different aspects of things. And so I think part of this Wellness Wednesdays that I wanted to create, and I'm going to invite you to come again, and hopefully you'll come in the very near future, maybe next week you'll show up again, because I'd like to do a series of these because I think they're really important. Is that I think it's important for people to understand that it doesn't matter where you start, as long as you start. That's the important part. It's to embrace that you're a human being and that really you didn't do anything wrong. That's the piece. I think we don't really understand as long as you start to take those steps. It's like they say that the journey of 1,000 steps begins with the first one, right? So I think my advice to someone is to come in for the advice to get that information. So back to you, Miss Jess. What would be your advice in this?
First and foremost, like I said, it's getting to know your organs and systems. Get curious about identifying your blood type. Get curious about the building blocks of the vitamins, minerals, and amino acids that supercharge the body and the energy of the body. And get curious about connecting body, mind, and spirit. There's so much more to explore than what we see. And so if you're willing to open the door and explore more, then we're here.
I love it. I love it. So I think today, I think it's a wrap for today, but I'd like you to come back next Wednesday, if you will, and we'll do another I think informational session. Eventually I said we'll figure out how to do is to hopefully be able to learn how to do this so that we can explore questions as they come in, because I'm not quite sure how to do that yet. But I have a Mission Inspired Health Facebook page that I have opened up discussions on that page. And I'd like to open up discussions. I will turn this loose on YouTube again. And hopefully you'll like and you'll share with your friends. And we'll invite you to continue the journey with us, because I think it's really important. And we're here because we're here to help. And we're here as practitioners at different levels. You're a very integrative practitioner and have been. That's how I met you, because I met you in my journey into launching not only from Western medicine into integrative medicine. And that's where I met your mom, Dr. Suzanne, and met the lovely you. And we have explored together a lot of different avenues, and you've inspired me. And you've helped to open my eyes to a lot of different aspects of how to do things in the world. So, in helping others, because we're both in service, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for everything. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting on the next call, and we'll see what comes up next.
Great. Have a wonderful day. Welcome to Wellness Wednesdays. Bye.